When tech billionaire Elena Rodriguez discovered her night janitor sleeping in his car with two small children in the back seat, she didn't just offer help. She discovered a truth that would shatter everything she thought she knew about success and sacrifice. What happened next will restore your faith in humanity. Before we get into the story, let us know in the comments, what's the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you? The fluorescent lights of Rodriguez Industries cast long shadows across the empty corridors as Elena Rodriguez stepped out of her corner office at 11:47 p.m. Her Louboutin heels clicked against the marble floor, each step echoing the weight of another 18-hour day. At 38, she had built a tech empire worth $3 billion, but tonight, like most nights, she felt the familiar ache of isolation that success had carved into her chest. As she walked toward the parking garage, something caught her eye through the floor-to-ceiling windows. In the employee parking lot, under the dim glow of a streetlight, sat a beaten Honda Civic with Louisiana plates. The car's windows were slightly fogged, and Elena could make out the silhouette of someone inside. Her first instinct was to call security. After all, the parking lot was supposed to be empty at this hour. But something made her pause. Something about the way the figure sat so still, so resigned, tugged at a part of her heart she'd forgotten existed. Inside that Honda Civic, 31-year-old Jerome Washington was living his worst nightmare. His 6-year-old daughter Zara was curled up in the back seat, her head resting on a pillow made from his janitorial uniform. His 4-year-old son Kai had finally stopped asking why they couldn't go home, his small body exhausted from another day of uncertainty. Jerome stared at the dashboard clock, watching it tick toward midnight. In 5 hours, he'd need to be back inside that building, mopping floors and emptying trash cans for the third shift. In 7 hours, he'd need to drop the kids at his sister's before racing to his second job at the warehouse. In 12 hours, he'd start his weekend shift at the grocery store. 3 jobs, 96 hours a week, and still, it wasn't enough. The eviction notice crumpled in his pocket felt like a stone in his chest. He'd been sleeping in his car for 3 days now, telling his children it was an adventure, a camping trip in the city. But the lie was getting harder to maintain, especially when Zara asked why other kids got to sleep in real beds. "Daddy?" Zara's sleepy voice drifted from the back seat. "Are we going home soon?" Jerome's throat tightened. He turned to look at his daughter, her hair still in the neat braids he learned to do from YouTube videos after their mother left 2 years ago. "Soon, baby girl. Daddy's working on it." But the truth was, Jerome was drowning. Despite working every hour God gave him, the medical bills from Kai's asthma treatments, the childcare costs, and the basic necessities of life had created a financial hole he couldn't climb out of. He'd been too proud to ask for help, too ashamed to admit that his best wasn't good enough. Elena found herself walking toward the car, her heels replaced by the soft whisper of her feet against asphalt. She'd kicked off her shoes somewhere in the lobby, something she'd never done in her life. As she approached the Honda, she could see more clearly now. 2 small forms in the back seat, a man in the front with his head in his hands. When Jerome saw the figure approaching, his heart stopped. He recognized the silhouette immediately. Elena Rodriguez, the woman whose face graced the covers of Forbes and Fortune.
"Yes, ma'am. Here at night, warehouse during the day, grocery store on weekends." Jerome's voice grew stronger as he spoke about his work. "I'm not asking for charity. I just need a few more days to figure something out." In the back seat, Kai started to cough, the harsh, wheezing sound that Jerome had learned to fear. He reached back instinctively, rubbing his son's back. "It's okay, buddy. Just breathe." "Does he have asthma?" "Yes, ma'am. That's part of why we're here." Jerome's voice broke slightly. "His inhaler ran out yesterday, and I don't get paid until Friday." Elena stared at this man, this father who was working himself to death for his children, and saw something she'd never seen before. Real courage. Not the kind that came from boardrooms and business deals, but the kind that came from loving someone more than yourself. "Mr. Washington," she said carefully, "when's the last time you and your children had a proper meal?" Jerome's pride flared. "We eat fine, ma'am." "That's not what I asked." Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "When's the last time you had a hot meal?" The silence stretched between them. In the back seat, Zara whispered, "Daddy, I'm hungry." Jerome closed his eyes. "Tuesday," he admitted. "We had McDonald's on Tuesday." It's Friday night, Elena said softly. Yes, ma'am. Elena made a decision that would change everything. Mr. Washington, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to let me do this, not as your boss, but as one human being to another. Will you let me help you? Jerome wanted to say no. Every fiber of his being screamed against accepting help from the woman who represented everything he'd failed to achieve. But then Kai coughed again, and Zara whispered about being hungry, and Jerome realized that his pride was a luxury his children couldn't afford. What did you have in mind? He asked quietly. First, let's get your son an inhaler. Then, let's get you and your children somewhere warm to sleep tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out the rest. Jerome stared at her, searching her face for any sign of pity or condescension. Instead, she saw something unexpected. Genuine concern, the kind that she'd seen in her own mirror every morning when she worried about her children. Why? He asked. Why would you help us? Elena was quiet for a long moment. Because, she said finally, I've spent so much time building an empire that I forgot to build a life. And you've been building a life with nothing but love and determination. Maybe we can help each other. An hour later, Jerome found himself in the passenger seat of Elena's Tesla, watching the city lights blur past while his children slept peacefully in the back seat. They'd stopped at an all-night pharmacy first, where Elena had quietly paid for Kai's inhaler and several backup medications. Then they'd driven to a family hotel, where Elena had booked them a suite for the weekend. I can't pay you back for this, Jerome said as they pulled into the hotel parking lot. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to let me do something good for once. As they walked into the hotel lobby, Elena Rodriguez, Billionaire CEO, carrying a sleeping 4-year-old, while Jerome carried Zara, the night clerk did a double take. But Elena's focus was entirely on the family beside her, on the way Jerome's hand gently stroked his daughter's hair, on the relief in his eyes when he saw the clean, warm room waiting for them. There's a restaurant downstairs, Elena said softly as Jerome tucked his children into the king-sized bed. They serve breakfast starting at 6. Ms. Rodriguez, Jerome said, turning to face her, I don't know how to thank you. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to let me do something good for once. But as she turned to leave, Jerome's voice stopped her. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you have children? Elena's face clouded. No. I was always too busy building my company. I kept telling myself I'd have time for a family later, but later never came. Jerome studied her face, seeing something there that reminded him of his own loneliness. Would you like to have breakfast with us tomorrow? The kids would love to meet the lady who helped them. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. I'd like that very much.
The next morning, Elena Rodriguez, who usually started her Saturdays with power meetings and conference calls, found herself in a hotel restaurant at 8 a.m., watching 6-year-old Zara carefully cut her pancakes while 4-year-old Kai explained the intricacies of his toy dinosaur collection. This one's a T-Rex, Kai said seriously, holding up a small plastic figure. He's the king of the dinosaurs, but he's not mean. He protects the other dinosaurs. Like your daddy protects you? Elena asked. Kai nodded enthusiastically. Daddy works really hard to take care of us. He says that's what daddies do. Elena glanced at Jerome, who was helping Zara with her orange juice, his face soft with love. Your daddy's right. As breakfast continued, Elena found herself laughing, actually laughing for the first time in months. Zara told jokes that made no sense but were hilarious in their innocence. Kai demonstrated his dinosaur voices. Jerome shared stories about learning to braid hair from YouTube and the time he'd accidentally put salt in the pancake batter. You know what I've been thinking about? Elena said as they finished eating. I've been thinking about how my company has a childcare center that's only open during the day. What if we extended the hours? What if we made it available for third shift employees too? Jerome looked up sharply. That would change everything for families like mine. Families like yours shouldn't have to choose between work and childcare, Elena said firmly. And you know what else? I've been thinking about wages, about how someone can work 3 jobs and still not afford basic necessities. Ma'am, you don't need to. Yes, I do. I need to because it's right, and because I've learned more about leadership in the last 12 hours than I have in the last 12 years. Over the following weeks, Elena and Jerome's unlikely friendship deepened. Elena would stop by the building during Jerome's shift, not to check on his work, but to check on him. She'd bring coffee and ask about Zara's school play or Kai's latest dinosaur discovery. She'd learned that Jerome had been studying computer programming online during his lunch breaks, dreaming of a career that would let him work days and be home with his children at night. "You know what I've been thinking about?" Elena said one evening as they sat in the break room. "I've been thinking about how my company has a child care center that's only open during the day. What if we extended the hours? What if we made it available for third shift employees too?" Jerome looked up sharply. That would change everything for families like mine. "Families like yours shouldn't have to choose between work and childcare," Elena said firmly. "And you know what else? I've been thinking about wages, about how someone can work 3 jobs and still not afford basic necessities. Ma'am, you don't need to. Yes, I do. I need to because it's right, and because I've learned more about leadership in the last 12 hours than I have in the last 12 years. 6 months later, Jerome Washington walked into Rodriguez Industries not as a janitor, but as a junior programmer. The company had implemented the extended childcare program, allowing him to work regular hours while knowing his children were safe and cared for. His salary had tripled, and for the first time in years, he could afford to rent a real apartment, a 2-bedroom place with a park across the street where Zara and Kai could play. But the changes weren't just in Jerome's life. Elena had discovered something she never knew existed, the joy of being part of a family, even if it wasn't her own. She'd become Auntie Elena to Zara and Kai, attending school plays and birthday parties, learning to braid hair almost as well as Jerome. "You know what I realized?" Elena said one evening as they sat in Jerome's new living room, watching Zara and Kai play with their toys. "I spent so many years thinking success was about what you could accumulate, but real success is about what you can give." Jerome looked at his children, then at the woman who would become not just his mentor, but his friend. "I think success is about having people who matter to you and knowing that you matter to them too." "Is that your way of saying, 'I matter to you, Mr. Washington?'" Elena teased. "You saved my family," Jerome said simply. "Of course you matter to us." "No," Elena said quietly. "You saved me. You and Zara and Kai. You showed me what it means to love someone more than yourself." The company had thrived under Elena's new leadership philosophy. Employee satisfaction had skyrocketed, productivity had increased, but more importantly, lives had changed. The extended childcare program had helped dozens of families. The mentorship program had launched careers. The increased wages had lifted people out of poverty. "You know what the best part is?" Elena said as they watched Zara teach Kai how to play chess. "This isn't just about us. Every person we help, every family we lift up, creates a ripple effect. Zara and Kai will grow up knowing that kindness matters, that success means helping others succeed." Jerome nodded, watching his daughter patiently explain the rules to her little brother. "They'll remember this. They'll remember that someone cared enough to help when we needed it most. And maybe someday they'll be the ones helping," Elena added. As the evening wound down and Elena prepared to leave, Zara ran up to her with a drawing, a picture of their family, including Elena, all holding hands under a rainbow. "This is us," Zara said proudly. "We're a family now." Elena knelt down to Zara's level, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, sweetheart, we are." Later that night, as Elena drove home to her penthouse apartment, she thought about the man sleeping in his car she discovered 8 months ago. Jerome Washington had been working 3 jobs, sleeping in his car, fighting every day just to survive. Now he was a programmer, a homeowner, a friend. His children had a future full of possibilities. But the real transformation, Elena realized, had been in herself. She discovered that true wealth wasn't measured in dollars, but in relationships. Real power wasn't about controlling others, but about lifting them up. And the greatest success wasn't building an empire. It was building a family, even if that family was created by choice rather than blood. The next morning, Elena woke up not to an alarm clock, but to a text from Jerome. Kai's dinosaur presentation is at 2 p.m. today. He specifically requested that Auntie Elena be there. Hope you can make it. Elena smiled, already rearranging her schedule. She'd built a $3 billion company, but nothing had ever made her as proud as being invited to a 4-year-old's dinosaur presentation. As she got ready for work, Elena thought about the questions she had asked viewers at the beginning of this story. What's the kindest thing a stranger has ever done for you? For Elena, the answer was simple. A stranger had let her help him, had allowed her to discover that kindness wasn't just about giving, it was about receiving, about being vulnerable enough to accept help, about building connections that transcended social barriers. Jerome Washington had been sleeping in his car when she found him, but he'd been rich in all the ways that mattered. He'd had love, determination, and the courage to keep fighting for his children. Elena had been sleeping in her penthouse, but she'd been poor in all the ways that counted. She had money, but no family, success, but no purpose, power, but no connection. Together, they had found something neither had possessed alone, a family built on kindness, respect, and the understanding that we're all stronger when we lift each other up. The story of Elena Rodriguez and Jerome Washington spread throughout the company, then throughout the business community, then throughout the world. It became a reminder that kindness isn't just nice, it's necessary. That success isn't just about climbing the ladder, it's about helping others climb too. And that sometimes the most profound transformations happen not in boardrooms or conference halls, but in hotel restaurants over pancakes and dinosaur stories. Today, Rodriguez Industries is known not just for its innovation, but for its compassion. The company has programs for single parents, extended childcare, mentorship opportunities, and living wages. But more importantly, it has a culture that values people over profits, relationships over results, and kindness over competition. Jerome Washington is now a senior programmer, leading the mentorship program that changed his life. His children, Zara and Kai, are thriving in school, secure in the knowledge that they're loved and that their future is bright. And Elena Rodriguez? She's still a billionaire, still a CEO, still a powerful force in the business world, but now she's something she'd never been before. She's family.